So if you've been paying any form of attention to a very particular trend in the modern heavy music scene and modern metal scene, you probably would have noticed that guitar players are tuning lower and lower, so low in fact that they're getting into bass territory. And some bands are even tuning lower than that. If you happen to be a bass player and you happen to find yourself in that situation, you may be asking yourself, what do I do with my bass? Do I tune the same exact note in the same register as the guitar, or should I just do the normal thing and just tune an octave down? And if I were to choose one over the other, what would the tonal benefits kind of really be, and what that kind of look like? And that's what I'm going to be doing in today's video. I'm going to be checking out the difference between tuning your bass in the same exact octave as the guitar, or tuning it a full octave lower than that. For those of you who don't know, hi, my name is Dante. I'm a guitar player and bass player turned audio engineer looking to get my foot into this industry and into this business, looking to answer, questions similar to this, and possibly answering questions that you guys have as well. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get back into today's topic. The band that probably popularized this idea or technique of tuning your bass to the same exact octave was Meshuggah. There's probably bands that have done that before, but maybe they were the ones that were very popular of doing that. For those of you who may not entirely know what I'm talking about when it comes to having the bass in the same octave as the guitar, here, let me show you. So obviously we all know what a guitar looks like, what a guitar sounds like, and it can come in all different kinds of tunings. The guitar I have here is a 7-string. Obviously it's tuned to drop F, so this bottom string is tuned to F1. The number next to the note represents the octave, so this guitar is tuned to F1, bottom string is tuned to F1, meaning that is in the first octave. That is the same exact note as the first fret on a standard tuned bass, which is super low. What people mean by tuning to the same octave means they'll take their bass guitar and tune their bass to this note, to the same exact note. That does work for a lot of bands. Obviously, it works for Meshuggah. It's worked for a ton of other bands. But maybe you kind of want to try something a little different and maybe see how it really sounds in the same octave or an octave below. But that comes with some limitations. So a lot of those limitations come with just tuning low. You're going to kind of lose out on definition a little bit on the bass. Also, because a lot of basses kind of cap out at like 35, at least for straight scale basses like this one here, the scale length taps out at like 35 inches for a lot of basses. And since you're going to be tuning that low, full octave below that F, you're going to lose tension very quickly. And it's also going to be very hard to find, string gauges that are that thick when tuning that low. Obviously, when you're tuning lower, you need to up the string gauge for any instrument to keep tension and clarity. So there's a lot of different ways to get around that. What I'm going to be doing in today's video is through pitch shifting, and obviously there's some drawbacks with pitch shifting, such as just weird artifacts that happen when tuning down like that. This video was actually inspired by another YouTuber here on YouTube by the name of Gary Hebner. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his last name right. You guys can go click either the card here on the screen, or I might leave a link in the description box, one of the two. You guys can check out that video. He did a very similar video to this. So if you guys kind of want a different perspective, go check his video out. But I'm gonna be doing my own little experiment today. So what I'm gonna be doing is using this bass. I'll give you guys a closer look. Bass I'm gonna be using is this guy. It's the Ibanez SR. I did a full video on this. You guys can go back on my channel and find that. It's a standard scale bass. I currently have it tuned to drop A sharp. So this bottom string is an A sharp. So still low when it comes to tuning, but not as low as the 7-string I have here, which is in drop F. So what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be playing obviously in the lowest string, just so I can keep the string size the same when I'm pitching up and down. So obviously I'm going to be pitch shifting up to F sharp 1 and then down to F sharp 0, which is still extremely low. Now obviously there are going to be some weird artifacts coming in when doing both, so there will be some tonal differences there when it comes to artifacts and pitch shifting, but that's not really what I'm going to be too concerned about in this video. My main concern when doing this experiment was to just kind of see how the overall vibe changes when having the bass in the same octave as a guitar or down the full octave. Especially when it comes to, you know, extremely low tunings, you know, like drop F, drop E. Some bands are even tuning down to double drop C sharp, which is insane. So with that being said, it's gonna be a full produced mix. I'm gonna switch between, you know, the same octave and the octave below, but I'm not gonna be saying which is which. It's literally gonna be like bass A, bass B. I'm not gonna do a reveal until the full mix is over. So let's go ahead and hop into a full mix. And before we do so, if you guys let me know what you guys kind of hear in your own system. So make sure you're listening on the very least onto decent headphones. If not, make sure you're using, you know, studio monitors if you have access to it, or some kind of monitoring system that isn't your phone. So anyway, with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into a full mix and see what the results are. Alright, so now that we have a full mix out of the way, I did notice some differences between obviously the same octave tuned bass and the octave below bass. Both had their own sound. Whether it's good or bad, that's up to you to decide, but personally, I think both sounded really good. Always prefer the octave below, personally, just because you do get a bit more low-end information and like sub-information when tuning an octave down, and the track just felt a bit more weightier. Personally, obviously I did have a EQ chart on the screen just in the entire time, just so you guys can kind of see the EQ differences. I didn't really notice any difference on the EQ graph. But with that being said, let me know what you guys heard or felt in terms of just how the whole track was and kind of how the experiment went for you guys and kind of what you thought. Again, I'm gonna go ahead and leave a link to Gary Hebner, his video. Go ahead and leave a link to that so you guys can have another point of reference for this style of experiment. But with that being said, here's what the same octave bass was in terms of letters. This is what the octave below was. Let me know if you guys guessed correctly. That being said, if you guys like today's video, feel free to like, subscribe, and turn on bell notifications to stay with what I'm doing, both in terms of experiment style videos like this and, you know, mixing and mastering videos as well. That being said, I'm rambling too much. I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers and would love to have you guys on the journey to that milestone and much further. But with that being said, see you guys in the next video. Rock on, guys.